The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Interior, Dr. Magdalene Ajani, who is also the chairperson of this committee. Please a resounding applause for her as she makes her welcome address.
Good morning, my boss, the Honorable Minister of Interior, Honorable Dr. Olubunmi Tunji Ojo, the Attorney General of the Federation, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, all State Attorney Generals of the Federation present here, the men on the high table, my colleagues from Ministry of Interior and the agency, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and privilege to warmly welcome you to this important stakeholders engagement convened for the presentation of the reports of the Independent Investigative Panel on alleged corruption, abuse of power, and other violations against the Nigerian Correctional Service. I wish to specifically acknowledge the presence of distinguished representatives of government institutions, the Comptroller General and senior officers of the Nigerian Correctional Service, heads of other security and law enforcement agencies, development partners, civil society organizations, members of the media, and other critical stakeholders whose participation in this engagement underscores our shared commitment to transparency, accountability, and reform in the administration of correctional services in Nigeria. This gathering marks a significant milestone in the efforts of the Ministry of Interior to strengthen institutional integrity and promote public confidence in the agencies under its supervision. The decision to constitute the Independent Investigative Panel arose from the need to thoroughly examine serious allegations relating to corruption, abuse of power, misconduct, and other violations said to have occurred within the Nigerian Correctional Service. Given the strategic role of the service in the criminal justice system and in national security, it became imperative to subject these concerns to an objective, fair, and credible review. This initiative, in line with the renewed hope agenda of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, is anchored on the restoration of security, the deepening of justice, and reaffirmation of human dignity across all facets of governance. By confronting systemic failures with courage and candor, we are delivering on Mr. President's vision of a correctional system defined by accountability, integrity, and a people-centered approach. Such a system is not merely institutional necessity, it is a cornerstone of a just and orderly society. As chairperson of the panel, I had the privilege of working with committed and experienced members who approach this assignment with diligence, impartiality, and a deep sense of national responsibility. At this point, I would please ask the members of the Investigative Committee and all the DCGs of Nigerian Correctional Service to stand up for recognition. Thank you so much for being a great team. You may please sit down. The panel engaged with a broad range of stakeholders. We reviewed submissions and relevant records and carefully considered the issues brought before it. Our work was guided by principles of fairness, independence, and fidelity to the public interest. The essence of this engagement is not only to present the report, but also to provide a platform for dialogue, reflection, and collective ownership of the recommendations that may emerge from this process. Reform of any public institution, especially one as critical as the Nigerian Correctional Service, requires honesty in diagnosing challenges and courage in implementing the solutions. It also requires collaboration among all relevant actors if meaningful and sustainable change is to be achieved. The Nigerian Correctional Service occupies a central place in the justice delivery system. Its mandate goes beyond secure custody of inmates to include rehabilitation, reformation, and reintegration. It is therefore essential that the institution operates in a manner consistent with the rule of law, respect for human beings, professionalism, respect for human rights, please, professionalism, and accountability. Any practice that undermines these values must be confronted decisively, while every effort must be made to strengthen the service for more effective performance. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to extend my sincere appreciation to the Honorable Minister of Interior, Honorable Dr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, whose visionary leadership and unwavering support have been instrumental in the transformation of the ministry and its agencies towards enhanced performance. Thank you, sir. I also commend the members of the panel for their diligence, their professionalism, and dedication. Their work constitutes a vital contribution to strengthening accountability within our correctional system. I am confident that this engagement will enrich all collective understanding of issues, deepen consensus around needed reforms, and chart a practical course for implementation. I urge all participants to engage constructively, speak frankly, and remain focused on the broader national interest. Let me once again welcome you and thank you all for your presence, your support, and commitment to this important national assignment. I wish us all very productive deliberations and a successful engagement. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
May I invite another resounding applause for the dynamic permanent secretary, Ministry of Interior, who has distinguished herself, committed to national building. Thank you very much. On that note, I will now invite a custodian of justice, pivoting the advancement of a more human, secure, reformative, rehabilitative, and reintegrative service, the #1 correctional officer and the 3rd substantive controller general of corrections, Sylvester Ndidi-Nwakuche, MFR MNI, for his remarks.
The Honorable Minister of Interior, Dr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, my boss, my leader, the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, the Chairperson of the Independent Investigative Panel on Alleged Corruption, Abuse of Power, torture, cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment against the Nigerian Correctional Service, and the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Dr. Magdalene Ajani. Honorable Minister, sir, the protocol has been well established. Permit me to align myself with it. First of all, I want to begin with where it is right to begin, and that is with gratitude. I want to express the profound appreciation of the Nigerian Correctional Service to the Honorable Minister of Interior, Dr. Lubemi Tunjojo, for the wisdom and civic courage it took to constitute this panel. I also want to commend the chairman and members of the panel for the seriousness, the diligence, and professionalism with which they discharged what was, by any measure, a weighty national assignment. The establishment of this panel was not an act of condemnation, it was an act of accountability. And accountability, properly understood, is the foundation upon which trust between an institution and the society it serves must be built. The Nigerian Correctional Service exists to do more than confine. We are mandated to correct, to rehabilitate, to reintegrate, and above all, to preserve the dignity of every person within our custody, because dignity is not forfeited at the point of conviction. That mandate places enormous demands on my officers, our infrastructure, and our leadership. And it places equal demands on our willingness to be honest about where we have fallen short. Today's engagement is therefore not a ceremony. It is a reckoning, and a constructive one. We have not come here to trade in defensiveness or denial. We have come to listen, to understand, to reflect, and to commit. The findings of this panel, wherever they are difficult to confront, must be confronted. Not because the service is defined by its failures, but because it must be measured by its response to them. Honorable Chairman, I want to say here plainly, the majority of my officers serve with professionalism, with dedication, and quiet sacrifice, often in conditions that are far from ideal. The misdeeds of some must not be permitted to eclipse the honor of the many. This process is about holding the institution accountable, and through that accountability, vindicating and protecting the good people who wear this uniform with integrity. Honorable Minister, sir, ladies and gentlemen, what we take away from this engagement must be more than a record of deliberations. It must be the foundation of a reform agenda that should be specific, time-bound, and measurable. We owe that to the public. We owe that to the persons in our custody. We owe that to the officers who serve this service faithfully. I urge every participant today to bring candor and courage and goodwill to these discussions. Let us speak plainly. Let us listen generously, and let us commit seriously. The path from assessment to action is not a long one, but it requires the will to walk it. I am committed to walking it, and I invite every stakeholder in this room to walk it with us. Thank you for listening.
Please, once again, appreciate the Controller General of Corrections, Sylvester Ndidinwakuchi, for that beautiful remarks. Now we transit to goodwill messages. And to start, I will respectfully invite the representative of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Please, the representative of UNODC. Do we have any representative? I will segue to the representative of United Nations Children's Fund, Mona Haika. Please, a resounding applause for her as she makes her way to the podium.
Thank you. Permit me to align with the existing and already established protocol. Good morning. UNICEF commends the Federal Ministry of Interior for its leadership in advancing accountability, transparency, reform through independent investigative panel on alleged corruption, abuse of power, torture, and cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment within the Nigerian Correctional Service. This process matters. It matters because strong institutions are built on accountability, because public trust depends on transparency, and because even system failure are real people, especially children, whose rights and dignity must be protected. As we reflect on the findings of this panel, we must also confront a closely related reality: the situation of children and young people deprived of liberty in Nigeria. UNICEF is proud to have supported the National Assessment of Children and Young People Deprived of Liberty, and the findings are very sobering. On an average, 26,000 children pass through custodial settings annually in Nigeria. And of those, over 122,000 were held in adult custodial facilities, exposing them to significant protection risks. In both institutions, approximately 74% were awaiting trial and administrative processes, not yet convicted. These figures are a clear call to action. They highlight systemic gaps, prolonged pretrial detention, limited access to legal aid, insufficient diversion options, and weak linkages between justice and child protection systems. They also highlight a critical concern that detention is too often used where prevention, protection, and alternatives should exist. Nigeria already has a very strong legal and policy framework to address this. We recognize the Child Rights Act of 2003, which affirms the detention of children must be a measure of last resort and for the shortest possible time. The Administration of Criminal Justice Act also promotes speedy trials and non-custodial measures. The Nigeria Correctional Services Act reinforces rehabilitation and introduces non-custodial service options. The challenge before us is implementation. This is why today's engagement is so important. The panel's work is not only about identifying wrongdoing, it is about strengthening systems, restoring trust, and ensuring that custodial environments are safe, accountable, and humane. The way forward is clear: strengthen oversight and accountability, ensure zero tolerance for abuse and misconduct, expand access to legal and reduce prolonged pretrial detention, scale up diversion and non-custodial measures, especially for children, and invest in psychosocial and rehabilitation services. For UNICEF, this is at the core of our Justice for Children agenda. A child in conflict with the law is still a child, entitled to dignity, protection, and a second chance. Justice system must therefore prevent harm, promote rehabilitation, and support reintegration. UNICEF remains committed to supporting the government of Nigeria to reduce child detention, strengthen safeguards, and build a correctional system that reflects accountability, humanity, and fairness. Let this report not be the end of a process, but the beginning of a sustained reform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. Representative of UNICEF, Mona Haika. And now, may I humbly invite the representative of International IDEA. Please, a resounding applause for the representative of the International IDEA as he gives his goodwill message.
if I may, like the one who spoke before me, also adopt the protocols that have been established. I bring you goodwill from the head of programs for International IDEA Nigeria, Mr. Danladi Plank, who had to attend another meeting today, and he sent me here to represent him. So distinguished guests, I want to say at the very outset that we want to acknowledge the very robust opportunities that the Honorable Minister for the Ministry of Interior provided to International IDEA through the Rollout Program to support the investigative panel in the very, very important assignment that it discharged over the last few months. We know about the Secretary for the Ministry of Interior, and I was a witness to some of the things that have been reported in the report we're going to be discussing today and tomorrow. I want to commend again the Ministry of Interior, the audit teams that went on these visits, all the partners that participated in this for their due diligence, the professionalism they exhibited in the course of the investigations, of course, the courage in undertaking the exercise. The issues that they addressed, that the report addresses, allegations of corruption, abuses of power, torture, and other forms of inhuman treatment in custody, are very, very significant. They speak to the need to continuously strengthen the integrity, accountability, and humanity of our correctional system. As a program, ROLAC is committed to advancing criminal justice reforms, and that includes correctional reforms, to improving access to justice, to strengthening anti-corruption efforts across Nigeria. This engagement today reflects the power of collaboration and evidence-based reform in addressing systemic challenges within the criminal justice sector. So as we reflect on the findings of the report and the recommendations of the report, it is critical that we move from, forgive me, it is critical that we move from diagnosis to decisive action. It is important that we strengthen oversight, accountability mechanisms, that we improve custodial conditions and safeguard the rights of inmates in custody. But it is also extremely important, we must not forget this, that the welfare and the professionalism of correctional personnel also remain very, very central to the reforms that we want to achieve at the end of the day. As I mentioned earlier, I was in the team that the Honorable Permanent Secretary led to visit some correctional facilities in Lagos. And the things that my eyes saw essentially speaks to the reality that our systems not only dehumanize offenders in custody, they also dehumanize the managers of those facilities. When we do not have adequate training and we do not have adequate funding for correctional service, we may not demand too much than we have given to or of our correctional service officials who, like the Controller General has said, many of them do a sterling job, but under very impossible conditions. This process presents a unique opportunity to reinforce public trust and to build a correctional system that is humane, transparent, and aligned with national and international standards. I encourage all stakeholders to engage constructively and to commit to implementing the recommendations of the panel. Together, we can drive meaningful and sustainable reforms that uphold human dignity for the offender, importantly also for the correctional service officer, that strengthens the rule of law in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, the representative of International IDEA. Please, I want to respectfully implore us that our goodwill message should not exceed 2 minutes, please. We are live and we don't want to exceed the slated time. Thank you very much. And on that note, may I respectfully invite the President, Nigerian Bar Association. If he's here, please a resounding applause for him as he makes his way. Now, may I invite the Director General, Legal Aid Council of Nigeria for his goodwill message. Please a resounding applause for the Director General, Legal Aid Council of Nigeria.
Thank you, ma'am. Honorable the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Olasunkomi Fagbemi, the Honorable Minister of Interior, Dr. Olubunmi Tunji Ojo, the Permanent Secretary, Federal Minister of Interior, and Chairman of the Independent Investigative Panel on Alleged Corruption against the Nigerian Correctional Service, the Controller General of Correctional Service, other distinguished persons on the high table, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to this important stakeholders engagement. I acknowledge, appreciate and thank the Honorable Minister, Dr. Olubunmi Tunji Ojo, for his commitment to enhance service delivery, transparency, accountability, and institutional reform of the Nigerian Correctional Service in Nigeria. The establishment of the independent panel to review these serious allegations reflect a commendable stance and effort to strengthen public trust and uphold the rule of law in government institutions. We are at the final trenches of a process which began when the Honorable Minister commissioned this independent investigation panel with the enormous and tedious task of conducting inquiry into several violations against correctional officers, identifying hindrances to the effective implementation of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act 2019, particularly as it relates to compliance with global incarceration standards, implementation of non-custodial measures, reformation of offenders, and addressing congestion in our detention facilities, and of course, profiling strategic recommendations. As an institution mandated to ensure access to justice by providing free legal assistance to the indigent, the Legal Aid Council upholds the sanctity of safeguarding the fundamental rights and dignity of persons in custody. The importance of rehabilitation and reintegration, consistent with the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Nigerian Correctional Service Act 2019, and Nigerians' international human rights obligations. As such, we view this engagement as a critical step toward ensuring that the findings and recommendations of the panel translate into meaningful reforms that enhance oversight, improve detention conditions, protect the rights of inmates, and strengthen accountability mechanisms within the correctional centers. The Legal Aid Council is glad to have been part of the process leading up to this stakeholders' engagement. We nominated, The Legal Aid Council, in the actualization of our mandate, will continue to play its part in ensuring that the rights of incarcerated persons in Nigeria are respected, protected, and defended. We remain committed to working collaboratively with the Ministry of Interior and the Nigerian Correctional Service and other stakeholders to advance reforms that promote access to justice, custodial decongestion, non-custodial measures, and the full implementation of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act. We commend the Honorable Minister and the Ministry once again for this initiative and look forward to constructive dialogue and actionable outcomes that will strengthen Nigeria's justice and correctional system. I wish all of us a memorable and fruitful engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. May I now invite the Executive Secretary, National Human Rights Commission, for his goodwill message. Please, a resounding applause for him as he makes his way here.
The Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, the Honorable Minister of Interior, the Chairman of the Investigation Panel, ladies and gentlemen, let me please adopt the already established protocols. I'm indeed delighted to deliver this goodwill message at the important stakeholders' engagement on the final report of the Independent Investigation Panel on alleged corruption, abuse of power, torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. Let me begin by commending the Federal Ministry of Interior for convening this engagement, for demonstrating commitment to transparency, accountability, and reform with the Nigerian Correctional Service. I also wish to acknowledge the painstaking efforts of the independent investigative panel in carrying out its terms of reference with diligence and courage. This engagement comes at a critical time. The protection of human rights, especially within the custodial settings, remains a fundamental obligation of the state under our Constitution, and both under our Constitution and international human rights treaties. Our correctional facilities are not merely places of detention. They are institutions for rehabilitation, restoration, and reintegration. Therefore, the dignity and rights of all persons in custody must be upheld at all times. The issue under consideration, allegations of corruption, abuse of power, torture, etc., are serious concerns that strike at the core of human dignity. Addressing them is not only a legal necessity, but also a moral imperative. The National Human Rights Commission remains deeply committed in promoting and protecting the rights of everyone, including those deprived of their liberty. Over the years, the Commission has actively monitored detention facilities, investigated complaints emanating therefrom, and engaged custodial authorities to ensure compliance with human rights standards. As we reflect on the findings and recommendations of this report, it is important that we move beyond acknowledgement of the allegations of corruption, abuse of power, torture, inhuman and degrading treatment, and move towards mitigating them. The Commission stands ready to support the implementation of the panel's recommendations through monitoring, advisory services, and continued stakeholder engagement. We believe that with sustained commitment, Nigeria can build a correctional system that reflects justice, humanity, and respect for rule of law. In conclusion, I urge all stakeholders present to approach the implementation of reports with openness, sincerity, and the shared resolve to effect meaningful change within the custodial facilities across Nigeria. I want to thank you for your attention, and let us have a fruitful deliberation.
Thank you very much, sir. May I now invite the Secretary, Body of State Attorneys General, Senior Ibrahim Suleiman, for his 2 minutes goodwill message. Thank you very much, sir.
The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Olasukanmi Fagbemi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Honorable Minister of Interior, Dr. Olubunmi Tunji Ojo, the Controller General, Nigerian Correctional Service, Honorable Attorney Generals of the respective states here present, top government functionaries, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to stand before this distinguished gathering of chief law officers of various states with our distinguished host, the Minister of Interior, to discuss the report of the Independent Investigative Panel against a series of allegations concerning alleged corruption, abuse of power, torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment of inmates by the Nigerian Correctional Service. Let me commence by appreciating the Honorable Minister of Interior for finding it worthy to identify with the body of state attorneys general as a major stakeholder in the administration of justice in Nigeria. The body was created to provide a platform for collaboration of performances and discharge of the constitutional powers of the Office of Attorney General across the states. There is no gainsaying that the Nigerian Correctional Service is a major stakeholder in the administration of criminal justice in Nigeria. It was in a bid to give the former prison authority a facelift and system overhaul that it transitioned into the Correctional Service, which focused on rehabilitation, reformation, and reintegration of inmates into the society. How well the service is faring is an issue we all must address at a gathering like this. The Correctional Service is not without its fundamental challenges, which the change of name and uniform has not been able to tackle. Some of such challenges are the allegations of corruption, abuse of power, and degrading treatments of inmates, which led to the constitution of an independent investigative panel to uncover some of these mysteries and recommend the ways forward. As chief law officers of states, We are not oblivious of the Herculean tasks and responsibilities placed upon the shoulders of the Correctional Service. We have consistently collaborated with the service at various levels and always ready to assist when called upon. Our gathering today is a testament to our readiness to contribute our quota in ensuring we have a country that works for all and conscious of the fundamental rights of everyone, including inmates. I am certain we will make the best of this meeting to look for ways to improve the Correctional Service and ensure robust collaboration. I urge us to contribute meaningfully to the discourse, as this is aimed at shaping the future of the country. I thank you all for the attention.
Thank you very much, sir, for that insightful goodwill message. May I now invite the Director General, Conference of Speakers, Mr. Busari Sarafadin, for his goodwill message. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The Honourable Minister of Federal Ministry of Interior, Dr. Olubunmi Ojo, the Honourable Minister, Federal Ministry of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Prince Lateef Olasukomi, the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Interior, Dr. Magdalene Ajani, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. I am standing for my chairman, the Chairman Conference of Speakers of State Legislatures of Nigeria, who doubles as the Honorable Speaker, Delta State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Guo Dennis Emomotimi. He would have been here personally, but due to other equally important engagement, he couldn't. And he directed that I should come here and present his goodwill message. So on behalf of the Conference of Speakers of State Legislatures of Nigeria, I wish to express our sincere appreciation to the Honourable Minister of Interior, the Permanent Secretary, and the leadership of the Ministry for convening this important stakeholders' engagement on the final report of the Independent Investigative Panel concerning the Nigerian Correctional Service. The Conference of Speakers considers this engagement both timely and significant. Correctional institutions play a central role in the administration of justice and remain critical to the protection of human dignity, the promotion of the rule of law, and the rehabilitation and reintegration of persons in correctional custody in society. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the establishment of the Independent Investigative Panel reflects the federal government's commitment to transparency, accountability, and institutional reform within the correctional system. It also underscores the importance of ensuring that correctional facilities operate in line with constitutional guarantees and internationally recognized standards relating to humane treatment and custodial management. The Conference of Speakers of State Legislatures of Nigeria views correctional reform as an essential component of strengthening democratic governance and restoring public confidence in the justice administration system. State legislatures across the Federation remain committed to supporting legislative initiatives, strengthening oversight frameworks, and promoting policies that safeguard fundamental rights while enhancing the effectiveness of correctional institutions. It is particularly important that the recommendations arising from this investigative process contribute meaningfully to addressing systemic challenges such as congestion in custodial facilities, the high number of awaiting trial inmates, infrastructure gaps, and the need to strengthen rehabilitation and reintegration programs for inmates across correctional centers nationwide. Distinguished participants, it is also important to recognize the significance of the recent constitutional amendment which moved correctional services from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list. This development represents a major milestone in Nigeria's justice sector reform efforts, and creates new opportunities for stronger collaboration between the federal government and state governments in advancing correctional reforms across the Federation. In this regard, Engagement with state houses of assembly becomes especially important in ensuring that the recommendations emerging from this investigative process translate into coordinated legislative, policy, and institutional actions at both the federal and subnational levels. The Conference of Speakers therefore considers continued collaboration with the state legislatures essential to the successful implementation of correctional sector reforms within Nigeria's evolving federal justice architecture. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, sustainable reform of correctional institutions requires close collaboration among the executive, legislature, judiciary, correctional authorities, and relevant stakeholders, including civil society organizations and development partners. The Conference of Speakers stands ready to support constructive engagements that will strengthen accountability mechanisms, promote respect for human dignity, and enhance the operational effectiveness of correctional institutions across the country. It is our expectation that the outcome of this stakeholders' engagement will contribute meaningfully to strengthening Nigeria's correctional system in ways that reflect our shared commitment to justice, fairness, institutional integrity, and rehabilitation. On behalf of the Conference of Speakers of State Legislatures of Nigeria, I wish you all fruitful deliberations and a successful engagement. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir. At this point in time, I want to respectfully acknowledge and invite for a goodwill message President, Nigeria Bar Association, Mazi Afam Osigwe San. Please, a resounding applause for him.
The Honorable Minister of Interior, the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, Minister of Justice, please permit me to adopt the already established protocol. And I have to apologize for my lateness to this event. I had a court engagement this morning, and I had to quickly dash the court before coming here. That we are gathered here today. Yes. That we are gathered here is a testimony of the ability of the Ministry of Interior as well as the Nigerian Correctional Service, not only to acknowledge that there may be allegations against the operations of the service, but of its commitment for accountability, to open itself up to review, and also to welcome recommendations on how to reform the system and make it better. I think it was the UNODC which some time ago said that how we treat prisoners mirrors our understanding of safety, justice, and understanding and let me take that again. How we treat prisoners mirrors our understanding of safety, justice, and human dignity for all members of our society. As we sit here, it will not be enough for us to know and that we are free persons, but to know that it could be us, it could be any of our relations. And we should care about how those persons who have, for one reason or the other, found themselves there, got there. I know that it could be any one of us. And this presentation of this report should not be something we just present and go away. But we should go away with a commitment. I'm glad that the Committee of Speakers and body of Attorney General of State are represented here. And of course, the Chief Law Officer of the Federation. We must commit to treating our prisoners better. We must show that we are willing to accord them the highest standard of human dignity and respect. And we must commit to ensure that the justice system works well, that our courts do not turn the prisons or, as the correctional services, the detention facilities or centers are now called, a dumping ground for persons who may have no business being there. The high number of persons awaiting trial may be a failure of our justice system to take accountability. And I also hope that this kind of stakeholder engagement will involve our courts, our magistrates, which make remand order without any return date for review, that keep dumping people there for police and other security agencies that send people on remand without taking any further steps to prosecute them. And on behalf of the Nigerian Bar Association, I once more reiterate our commitment to be part of this process that ensures that we give the highest level of international best practice in our correctional services and accord the highest level of respect and human dignity to persons who find themselves behind the walls, and also commit to whatever reform we must all agree here we must put in place to ensure that these allegations become a thing of the past. Once more, thank you for pretending that you didn't notice that I came late. Thank you also very much.
Thank you very much, Father, for that inspiring goodwill message. May I invite the Attorney General of the Federation and the Honorable Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi-San, for his remarks. Please, a resounding applause for the Attorney General.
Thank you very much. Let's have a seat. This is a very creamy gathering by any standard. Where do I start from and how do I end it? You have all the critical stakeholders. You forgive me if I'm not able, and I'm not going to mention you individually. Not that you don't deserve it, but because time will not permit. Even at that, I appreciate and recognize my brother, the Honorable Minister of Interior, the Permanent Secretary, my President of the Nigerian Bar Association, who has just collected his money before coming to this gathering. It's legit. That's not corruption. Yes. Yes. My colleagues from the subnationals, that is the attorneys general of various states, my directors from the Federal Ministry of Justice and the heads of agencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me say that it is my distinct pleasure to extend warm greetings and goodwill to all participants gathered for this landmark shareholders engagement, convened to present the final report of the independent investigative panel. We are here to confront documented allegations of corruption, abuse of power, and systemic violations within the Nigerian Correctional Service, an exercise that is as much about institutional healing as it is about administrative accountability. Let me begin by commending the Honorable Minister of Interior for his leadership in facilitating the process and for demonstrating an unwavering commitment to transparency and reform within one of our Federation's most critical justice institutions. I also acknowledge the diligent service of the independent investigative panel chaired by the Permanent Secretary, whose rigorous inquiry into these sensitive national issues reflects a profound sense of duty to the Nigerian people. Distinguished guests, this engagement is both timely and significant, as the Nigerian Correctional Service occupies a vital junction in our administration of criminal justice. Beyond the mandate of safe custody, this institution is the heartbeat of rehabilitation, reformation, and reintegration. Therefore, any shadow of corruption or abuse of power within its walls strikes at the very core of our social contract. Public institutions must continually earn the trust of the citizens they serve. And the presentation of this report is not merely an administrative milestone, but a bold step towards reinforcing the integrity of our justice sector. It reflects our collective resolve to identify systemic gaps with honesty and to pursue the practical, high-impact solution necessary to restore professionalism and human dignity to our correctional framework. As the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, I wish to underscore that accountability remains the cornerstone of government's vision.
Our commitment to human rights is best exemplified by the official designation of Nigerian Human Rights Commission as the Nigeria's national preventive mechanism. By establishing a specialized department within the National Human Rights Commission dedicated to this role, we have fulfilled a critical international obligation, empowering the NPM to conduct unannounced inspections of all places of detention to ensure that the treatment of persons deprived of their liberty meets global standards. The repeal of the Nigerian Prisons Act and its subsequent reenactment as Nigerian Correctional Service Act 2019 was a direct legislative response to the systemic challenges and human rights concerns that these independent investigative panel are so rigorously examined. The transition marked a fundamental shift from a punitive colonial-era philosophy to a modern rehabilitative model centered on reformation and human dignity. By providing the statutory mandate for non-custodial sentencing and mandatory reporting on facility capacity, the Act serves as the legal bedrock for the very reform we are discussing today. It is this legislative framework that empowers us to move beyond the findings of this report towards a correctional system that is transparent, accountable, and fully aligned with international human rights standards. I urge all participants to approach to these discussions with objectivity and a shared commitment to national interest. The true value of this exercise lies not only in the panel's findings, but in the sincerity of our response and our courage to implement the necessary sanctions and reform. Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Federal Ministry of Justice, I assure you of our continued support for every constructive effort aimed at deepening public confidence and promoting a justice system that reflects the principles of fairness, accountability, and the absolute respect for human rights. I wish all of us productive and impactful engagement. Thank you for this.
Thank you very much, sir. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi. Distinguished guests, it is my pleasure to humbly invite an exemplary and exceptional leader, a monumental achiever and catalyst of change, one of Nigeria's finest, whose visions have continued to strengthen institutions. His leadership style is decisiveness and swift implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I respectfully invite the Honorable Minister of Interior, Honorable Dr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, for his keynote address and declare the conference open.
Thank you. May we have our seats, please? Let me start by recognizing in political space, we'll say my leader, and a mentor of mine, the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice. And let me also recognize here my partner in the Ministry of Interior. I call her the amazing, amiable, dazzling dazzler of the Ministry of Interior. Dr. Magdalene Ajani, I appreciate you. And let me welcome here my own brother from another mother, the President of the Nigerian Bar Association. As a matter of fact, I think I'm becoming a lawyer by association. Let me recognize especially the CG of the Correctional Service, the man
I call the silver lining in the sky of correctional service. Sylvester Nwakushe, I recognize you. And let me also recognize the representative of UNICEF. Thank you so much, UNICEF, for the support. Thank you so much, International IDEA, for the support. And also, let me recognize the chairman of the Speakers Conference. Thank you for coming. And may I also recognize the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. And please permit me to recognize the DG, Legal Aid Council of Nigeria. I recognize you. And of course, the body of attorneys generals, the chief law officers of various states, you are highly recognized. And of course, let me recognize the wonderful team, independent team. They've done this great job. Please, may you stand up? Please stand up for recognition, please. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please have your seats, please. Thank you. For me, let me say, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this important stakeholder engagement on the consideration of the final report of Independent Investigative Panel on alleged corruption, abuse of power, torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment within the Nigerian Correctional Service. This is a classical case of when life throws you lemon, you make a lemonade. I could remember that what brought about this panel was when the Bobrisky issue happened. We had two options. Then, number one was to just take it, accept it, and move on as if nothing happened. Or number two, for us to distill the issues and accept our mistakes, understand the problems, and to provide solutions. Of course, the number one option was the easier one. But we decided to go with the second option. That to me, without a problem, there can never be a solution. So when life throws the problems at you, it's because God wants you to provide a solution. So we decided to go with that. And coincidentally, the committee was inaugurated on the 24th of November 2024, making it exactly 16 months today that the committee was actually inaugurated. I'm sincerely grateful to the members of the panel for their dedication, professionalism, and diligence in carrying out this sensitive assignment. Their work represents a significant step towards strengthening transparency, accountability, and institutional integrity within the Nigerian Correctional Service. This panel was constituted in response to serious allegations of misconduct and violations within our correctional institutions. These allegations range from corruption and abuse of authority to human rights violations, including cruel and degrading treatment of persons in custody. Government considered it necessary to undertake a thorough and independent investigation, not only to establish the facts, but to also ensure that the Nigerian Correctional Service continues to operate in accordance with the principle of justice, accountability, and respect for human dignity. The Nigerian Correctional Service plays a critical role within our criminal justice system and national security architecture. Our custodial facilities are not meant to be places of torture and suffering, but institutions of correction, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Every individual in custody, regardless of their offense, retains their fundamental dignity and rights as human beings. And that is why it's very important for us. I always say this: repealing the Nigerian Prison Services Act and reenacting it as Nigerian Correctional Services Act in 2019 was not just for the sake of change of name. It's because there was a need for change of orientation. A prison, I always say, is a place of incarceration. A correctional center is a place of reformation, restoration, reintegration, and a place of correction. So, the findings of this panel have highlighted systemic challenges that require urgent attention. These include issues related to corruption, operational inefficiencies, poor welfare conditions, human rights concerns, and institutional gaps that must be addressed through comprehensive reforms. I have to, at this point, also appreciate Mr. President most sincerely for the choice of the CG of the Correctional Service. Because I'll tell you, since this panel started, if you can attest to it, almost every week before this panel was constituted, we had one issue or the other, correctional service issues. But since Mr. President gave us the CG, I can say, between you and I, even on the social media and across board, you will know we're not where we used to be. That's the truth. So, it further attests to Mr. President's reputation as the greatest hunter of talent. So, CG, you have to do more, because the President has invested his trust, and you must never betray it. So this engagement is therefore not merely a ceremonial presentation of a report. Rather, it's an opportunity for collective reflection and constructive dialogue among critical stakeholders whose collaboration is essential for sustainable reform of our correctional system. Your insights, recommendations, and support will help guide the implementation of the panel's findings and ensure that the necessary reforms are both practical and impactful. Let me reiterate the federal government's unwavering commitment to a zero-tolerance policy on corruption, abuse of power, and any form of human rights violations within our correctional facilities. Officers found culpable will face appropriate disciplinary and legal consequences in line with existing laws and regulations. I can tell you, as a matter of fact, when the interim report was submitted, I know a serving ACG at that time was found culpable, and today he's home. That's the truth. No matter who you are not too big. If you are not too big to commit the crime, then you shouldn't be too big to face the music. And that's it. And today, a lot of the people that were indicted, a lot of them are going through disciplinary actions. And I can tell you, they're not in the service going through disciplinary actions, they're at home going through disciplinary actions. And that is why today in our correctional service, in all our yards, you can see that people are being cautious, because the biggest responsibility God can give to you is to put the destiny of people, is to put the welfare, the well-being of people in your care, and that is leadership, and you must never abuse it. As a correctional service officer, you're saddled with the responsibility of preserving the integrity and dignity of the most vulnerable in the society. It's a career of conscience, and you must never betray that. So anybody that is not scared to betray that trust should not be too big to face the music. And that's the promise I'm making to you. Furthermore, we must recognize that reform is not solely about sanctions. It's also about strengthening institutions, improving operational standards, enhancing training and welfare for correctional officers, and ensuring that our facilities align with international best practice for correctional administration. The ultimate goal is to build a correctional system that promotes justice, restores hope, and supports the rehabilitation and reintegration of offenders into society as responsible citizens. And let me also once again appreciate the federal government, Mr. President, for approving, and I can tell you it has actually taken effect. Yes, we're not yet where we want to be, but we're not where we were in terms of feeding of our inmates. When this government came, feeding of inmates was about 750 naira a day. That's 3 meals at 250 naira per meal. But Mr. President, we did a memo to Mr. President. He approved it, and it has taken effect. At least it's a good starting point to give us 50% increment in terms of their feeding allowance. So it is now the responsibility of the civil society and all Nigerians to now hold the correctional service, accountable for improvement in the feeding of inmates, because Mr. President has approved, and as we speak, the Ministry of Finance has started paying the new rate for inmate feeding. It's good we put this out there so that Nigerians will know that it's not at all times issue of the president. Also, we must also hold everybody on the various rungs of the ladder accountable for actions. I therefore urge all stakeholders present to engage openly, share ideas, and contribute meaningfully to the discussions. Together, we can build a correctional system that reflects the value of fairness, accountability, human dignity, and respect for the rule of law. And of course, that is where our bodies of attorney generals, please, that's where we need you. Because if you look through the Nigerian Correctional Services Act of 2019, it's absolutely impossible to fully implement that act without you, without the states. And I have to say openly here, there are some states that, for instance, I know Enugu State is doing a lot with us. Akwa Ibom state government, they're doing a lot with us because they're trying to work on building some correctional centers, and they're collaborating with the federal government in doing that. Because I always say this, the responsibility of these inmates shouldn't just be responsibility of the federal government. Let's call it spade a spade. When we share the assets, we should also think of sharing the abilities. That's it. Because most of the more than 67%, right? About 90% of these inmates, they are state offenders, not federal offenders. 67% are awaiting trials. Of course, the federal government is doing everything to provide. But of course, we need to also collaborate with the states more, so that at the end, some of our correctional centers are old, some, in accordance with the law, we do not even have the 100 meters buffer zone. So a lot of these places needs to be relocated. Like the one in Enugu is in the GRA. The one in Akwa Ibom in Uyo is opposite the government house. So there's a lot. The one in Ibadan is in the market. So the one in Ikoyi is sharing a fence with the Ikoyi Polo Club. So in line with international standard, we need to solve some of these problems. And we have to understand, we cannot expect Mr. President to solve all these problems in one sweep, because these problems were not created overnight. I'll give you an example. The correctional center in the one in Suleja was actually built, I think, in 1914. Yeah, was built in 1914. The one in Ikoyi was built in 1956. So urbanization has eaten up, caught up with some of these correctional centers. So we need the help of the states to be able to collaborate with you in terms of relocating some of these correctional centers. That's number one. And also number two, the implementation of non-custodial measures is very key. To me, that is the major thing that we need to do. Non-custodial. Because I give you an example. When we did analysis, we analyzed that 67% of our inmates, they are awaiting trials. And a lot of these people are non-violent awaiting trials. Non-violent, non-custodial measures. That is not what the Ministry of Interior can do. Of course, myself and the Attorney General, we have spoken about that the Ministry of Interior and Justice will sit down. And obviously, maybe there will be another program where the states will also be involved. And we can find a solution on how to activate non-custodial measures. Because 7 years after passing the Nigerian Correctional Services Act, and we are still scratching the surface of non-custodial, I don't think it's good enough. Let's be blunt. Let's tell ourselves the truth. So we need to sit down and really decongest a lot of our correctional centers using non-custodial measures. I think this is what we actually need to do for us to solve the problem of overcrowding in our correctional centers. Once again, I want to thank you all for your presence and commitment to this important national assignment. It is my honor and privilege to declare this conference open. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, sir. The Honorable Minister of Interior, Honorable Dr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, is a reform-driven leader who has zero tolerance for corruption. Please, may I invite an order thunderous applause for the Honorable Minister of Interior, Honorable Dr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo. Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, at this point in time, we'll take the group photograph. The Honorable Ministers and members of the high table will take their photograph, and it will follow in a particular order, which will be coordinated by the Head of Press and Public Relations Unit, Mary Ali. On that note, we've come to the end of this opening ceremony of the stakeholders meeting. To bring this session to a close, may we all rise to take the national pledge. I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, to defend our unity, and uphold our honor and glory. So may God help us all. We'll take the group photograph, the honorable ministers, and the members of the high table. We'll take it there. Yes, here. Thank you very much. After the photograph, we'll go for tea break and continue with the technical session.
To be able to get the panel members.
Okay. He's going to the session. He's going to do it.